Welcome to Moviesflics. Today I will show you the film biography, crime, drama of 2017, based on reality story, titled Molly's Game. The robbers go ahead, be careful and careful. During the race, a glider in the snow runs down a steep slope. Molly recounts in the background a survey of 300 experts about what was the worst, something that can happen in sports. As the screens show the judges counting the points of the skiing competition, Molly goes on to say that one person responded. Ranking 4th in the Olympics, Molly is called to repair the deck. She recounts how she trained throughout her life while being trained by her father Larry, who only sees to achieve the goal, with complete disregard for his own well-being. She prepares herself mentally as she stares quietly at her iPod. In spite of all the obstacles, he has made a U.S. ski resort on his 20th birthday. This is the champion running in the Deer Valley, which is the last chance to enter the Olympics. Molly demonstrates her fine art as she slides down the slope. He explains how strange it is that the very pine branches help the miners beat him. Very precise skiing just removes his ski locks no matter how tight they are tied. Icon, that ski comes out just before the next ramp, causing him to fly in the wrong direction in the air. Sitting on the head, he crashes, the crowd roars and pants because of the disaster. The photographer captures it every second. Who answered that the worst thing that could happen to a sport was 4th place at the Olympics? Molly gives you an angry screw. Cameras around the room and scattered boxes display his number, Bucks. He is awakened by a call from FBI Special Agent Tomasino. He was ordered to go out and approach them. Molly has been arrested in connection with a non-violent crime. At that moment, Molly in the present moment remembers how unreasonably angry she seemed at the time, his teenage years. Don't look anything special. Eventually, she got a job as a waitress at a luxury club in Los Angeles where she got it to see the rich and famous. He shows ingenuity and cleverness to convince people to spend more money. Molly eventually worked for Dean Keith, whom he met at the club. Dean begins to use Molly to organize poker games for the rich and famous. Molly renovates the room, welcomes players, and takes from each of them $10,000. This is where he meets Player X, who will play a major role in Molly's life. As the game progresses, Molly prepares drinks. Sitting in the corner, you see he has just calculated $90,000 in a room full of movie stars, directors, therapists, boxers, and business titans who ignored all the money they were burning playing cards. One night Molly realized that she had just found herself trapped in a rock and a difficult environment, earning $3,000 with tips and the opposite approach to successful law degrees. Meanwhile, Molly waits patiently on the sofa of the high-level legal office where she meets Stella, daughter of Charlie Jaffe, who would be his lawyer. Charlie is reluctant to accept Molly as a client but later finds himself in a difficult situation, so he agrees to represent her as a representative of power. But a different future lawyer. After the final game in the Cobra's rest area, Player X is highlighted, demonstrating his great skill in poker, so the survival of the game will be complete depending on how other poker players will always want to play with Player X. You get a new place, a new ride, and $17,000 in cash. There is no rush to law school. As Molly and Charlie enter the courtroom, Charlie explains how he is. I will represent him as an acting attorney. Charlie is worried about something, so that he kept changing seats with guards sitting next to Molly. Judge Foxman summoned defendants to the inside of the courtroom. As their time draws to a close, Charlie changes his mind because of Molly's good heart. Charlie says he is her mentor. During her teenage years, Molly remembers how her younger brothers showed signs of high intelligence and athletics. Molly thinks to herself but does not understand why she always goes to her father in combat even during dinner. Molly criticizes his father but ends up failing when he is closed with a firm voice, show respect or start living on your own. Soon, in Los Angeles, he was already saving enough and doing his part to keep his way. Living in water, Dean lost to Player X. He pulls it out of Molly's face and tells her he's not leaving, to be paid as his chief helper. All his arguments for the protection of his rights are doomed to failure. Molly is unwilling to let this happen, uses her life-saving money to save space. Set the table, set the menu, prepare drinks and cigarettes, and highlight them, preparing for what he expects will be the night of the game that will take place before Dean drive him away. Molly is fired the next morning. She arrives at Dean's house, in office only to be accepted by Leah. In her place, he lied and sent Leah a message about deceptive information about the game. He arrives at the Four Seasons Hotel after gathering players tonight. She walks through the room wearing a magnificent dress to tell by giving her his phone as a benefit. So far in Los Angeles, Molly recounts how Harlan played well from the start until now. Demolished the worst player in the game, Brad Marion. He didn't lose much, but he couldn't get through it and he kept leaning forward and started losing a lot. Streak. At the time the whole of LA knew that Harlan could not be bled and everyone wanted to get into action. He keeps buying again. Molly, thinking he has money, puts it on his tab. In her last hand Harlan loses a large pot of $750,000 compared to royalty again. The seller later admits he has no $1.2 million to pay Molly. Player X reveals that he has been pushing Harlan and he was the one on loan. He is $1.2 million. They end up arguing in a negative way when Player X, out of jealousy, gets upset. The following night, Player X took the game from him. Finally in Los Angeles, just a moment as he sits in his room, he realizes that staying unsuccessful would not cut you off. He decides to go to New York and start over. Originally in New York, Molly hired his Playboy teammates who were talented and well-connected to get started. The trick is that Molly is in town now. He devises a plan to seduce the upper class of Apple. The poker game continues as Molly explains his nearly $5 million earnings, all earned legally. Invite major Russian poker players from Brooklyn. You succeed. Mike Davidoff, Ilya and Alexei Gershon, Shelby Habib are business experts in their respective fields. They made the game very interesting, but they lost. Molly relates that there was no way he could tell these gentlemen that they had deep black secrets. Additionally, in Charlie's office, Molly waits quietly. Charlie comes with the bad news that his plan is failing. Charlie calms down and asks Molly about his father. Molly admits he had a lot of pressure from his dad, but nothing compared to the approach Strong was upon him. With a quick voice Charlie couldn't intervene. Molly says she will tell them everything they need to know about him, but only through him. Charlie commits himself. Back in his New York time, Pat, his driver and security guards drove him home. Molly recounts how she fell in love with Pat because she was able to relax and not be judged. Pat apologizes for meeting a few hedge fund boys. He agreed to meet her for Seasons Bar. He saw that the two men, Paul and John G., were corrupt creditors. He begged her to let them go, but he refused. Her door tricks Molly into believing she has her own package. A man knocks on his door, knocks on his head, smashes his head against a wall, takes his money, jewelry, Negalide. A man has threatened to kill his mother in Telluride, Colorado. As he describes his rejection of Paul and John G. had a negative attitude. Molly on the floor is swollen and bruised. The last kick in her stomach passes Molly out when the perp goes with a bag full of money. After 2 simple weeks, preparing for the next set of games, you get a call from a drunken Douglas informing him that he would not be able to hold it. While they are chatting she receives a text message from one of her phones, which warns her that he did not leave because the FBI had raided his area. He overcame his fears and hurried away. Later, Molly has Charlie inside a conference room being investigated by 2 prosecutors, Henderson Wellstone, and another. He patiently answers their questions while Charlie loses his temper afterward. 5 hours of unsuccessful plea to prosecutors. They pressured Molly to cooperate and stand as a witness against the Russian mob. To keep him awake, Henderson counts the times his name is mentioned. From Mike Davidoff's wiretaps, Charlie taunts the prosecutor after Molly explains that they were talking about happiness. This causes Charlie to enter into a tumultuous, cruel, and relentless proclamation. Various reasons Molly could have taken advantage of us after being unjustly abused by U.S. authorities, yet he remains vigilant to protect all identity documents he knew, because all allegations painted by the media and the government have no bearing on reality. For the first year, Larry explains that he has chosen poker over all other areas in which he could have excelled, in the middle, because unknowingly, he wanted to control the powerful men. For the second year in a row, Molly discovers the reason why her father is so hard on her. It was the catalyst needed to be able to nurture 3 amazing achievements for a college professor. Salary. In her 3rd year, she finds out why Larry seems to love her brothers more than she does. He had caught her cheating on her mother at the age of 5, and even though she had it, he doesn't remember about it. He knew very little, which caused him to do something. The 1-year statement was a crazy distraction. Everything now made sense. Emotions arise, they correct and kiss. Charlie waits back in his office with a frown on his face. Molly scares him, Molly's children, until Charlie interrupts her with a new gift from the prosecutors. He returns his money and interest and walks on foot to get all his hard drives. They argue a lot because Charlie wants Molly to take a promise. Unmoved by Charlie's argument, Molly reassures Charlie that he can choose, pleading guilty rather than ruining many lives because his name is more important than finding him. Money back. Molly and Charlie waited in court as Judge Foxman arrived. She asked him 87 questions before accepting his request. Molly pleads guilty. Judge Foxman urged prosecutors to come and talk to him privately. Molly is confused. Judge Foxman unequivocally condemned the prosecutor's recommendations for punishment. He sentenced Molly to 200 hours of community service, annual probation, and $200,000 penalty before adjournment court. They seem to be entertaining, joking that no one is bothering Blooms, and they are chatting for the wonders of Christmas. During this fun and feast, he is impressed by the harsh reality that he does not know what it is. It happened in his life next. Remembering the accident, he wakes up slowly. Molly insists she is fine and asks for help getting up. He recounts that nothing good came out of it except that he was a great man, hard to kill. The camera passes through a slope where he exits as he quotes Churchill about his definition of success: the ability to go from failure to failure without losing, with zeal. The pine branch that started all this out goes into the snow. Conclusion. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you would like to see more videos like these.